Hi everyone, we're back. Jumping, or launching straight in, we're going to cover one of Disney's cult live-action comic book classics. Today's review is The Rocketeer.
Looking back. Disney's Renaissance period was the definitive decade it stomped the competition every time it released a movie in theaters. The Little Mermaid in 1989, Beauty and the Beast in 1991, Aladdin in 1992, and The Lion King in 1994 were the top juggernauts for those years. Animated films had never received such critical and financial success as they did. As covered before in my Inspector Gadget 2 review, the live-action end of films for Disney wasn't as well received from 1990 to 2000. But did you know that Disney produced a live-action comic book movie before it even had merged with Marvel Studios?
Blasphemy!
Well, they did, and that movie came in the form of The Rocketeer. Created by comic book illustrator Dave Stevens, the character was created as a homage to all pulp serials during the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. That means it had influences from shows like The Shadow. Originally published by Eclipse Comics in 1982, the character became an icon for its look and story. It was then later picked up by Dark Horse Comics, and then again by IDW Comics. And like many other graphic novels, it wasn't for children. Stevens included the main character's girlfriend named Betty, who was shaped as almost an exact copy to the popular pinup model Betty Page.
Yeah, not something you should be having your kids peeking at.
The adaptation of the comic to film, like all other older-style comic book movies of the 1990s, met with financial disappointment. On a budget ranging from $35 to $40 million, the film barely made back what it had. And you know what that means. That was it. Producers did not find it a profitable investment. However, there were different circumstances compared to The Shadow of 1994. Unlike The Shadow, which relied on people knowing of the character and hopefully still living, The Rocketeer was introduced a whole half a century later to a different generation. The problem was the marketing. For one, the main lead, Bill Campbell, was unheard of at the time. Initially, Disney was looking for big-name actors to fill the boots. One of those potential candidates was Johnny Depp. Could you imagine? Another issue were the posters.
You see, posters like these didn't really tell anybody anything. And nowadays it's more recognizable to people who are familiar with the film, but for people who don't know the character, even back then, they were kind of lost. If anything, people back then looked at the poster and said to themselves,
The Rock of who?
Oh, for crying out loud, haven't you read the papers?
Now, although the film did not make more money back than it had used, the critical reception was the most positive compared to other films like it. Even Dave Stevens has been quoted of being 70% satisfied with the final product. For a time when few lesser-known comic book characters had their own movies, if the very person who initiated the icon approved of the movie version, that's a pretty big deal. Unlike some people... Alan Moore. I got nothing against him. He's just been very vocal about his opinions. It's also probably safe to say that Stevens was the youngest illustrator to get a film version of his own creation. The creators of Batman, Superman, The Shadow, etc. were all much older than him. That's a major accomplishment. Now check this. Today, the film has a cult following, but like many other decisions made in the past, studio executives want to revive the series. At first, when Captain America: The First Avenger in 2011 was released, director Joe Johnston was asked whether a sequel to The Rocketeer would happen. Since 2011, a new report has been made that Disney is indeed moving forward with reviving the franchise, but this time, the lead will be an African-American female to don the suit and jetpack. Oddly enough, people draw parallels to The Rocketeer and to Marvel's Iron Man, at least in design, but now there's even a stronger similarity. Marvel Comics' Iron Man is also being revamped with a new female African-American lead. This report came out a full 2 weeks before the report about the Rocketeer reboot/sequel, or whatever it's going to be. But is it coincidence? Well, if Disney and Marvel Studios work conjointly now, what is the chance that somebody happened to think of the idea on their own? I don't know, it feels rather slim. Who cares? If Disney really is moving forward with bringing in another Rocketeer film, bring it!
Of course, I would prefer a sequel that includes the old cast, but at the same time I understand sequels in general don't usually get away with a 20 to 30 year gap, especially like films like Tron Legacy.
Overall plot and writing. Following closely to its source material, the story follows down-on-his-luck circus pilot Cliff Secord, played by Bill Campbell, looking to find a way to make money during the 1930s. Flying is what he loves, but that doesn't make him an airhead either. One day, while performing a test run, he comes across a jetpack that gets strapped on the user's back and takes off as fast as his planes, if not faster. The only way he got a chance to know this was when one of his friends was in danger and he used it to save them from the near-death experience. Thankfully, his co-pilot friend, Peavy, played by Alan Arkin, kludged a helmet for him to protect his identity. With news reports going about asking who is the flying hero, Secord hopes to impress his girlfriend, Jenny, played by the homina Jennifer Connelly. But little does Secord realize that the jetpack he holds onto is a top-secret military experiment that others are looking to obtain as well. Tracking nearby is fictional Hollywood actor Neville Sinclair, played by Timothy Dalton, and his gang led by Eddie Valentine, played by Paul Sorvino. Coming in at close second is Fitch, Ed Lauder, and Wooly, James Handy, who have the same orders by Howard Hughes, played by Terry O'Quinn. Written by Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo, the script has a number of things going for it. The story is unique in itself, and the setting is in a timeless period. This is actually a surprising thing when looking at these two writers' filmographies. The only time DeMeo and Bilson had worked on another comic book-related feature were all the episodes of the Flash TV show of the early 1990s. Other than this, these two writers have had only a number of films to their credit, but very few of them are ones people would probably recall. The only other cult classic film that's related to these two is the 1984 sci-fi film Trancers. This was directed by Charles Band. If you don't know who Charles Band is, well, he's the guy who initiated the Ginger Dead Man franchise in 2005. Yeah, that series annoyed a lot of people.
But I'm not saying Trancers is bad, but at the same time I would think it has a different kind of following. I think.
There's actually not much to gripe about when it comes to the plot. Audiences will find out that it sets forward a sequence of events that can only occur one way. The thing is, once Secord calls the pack his own, he's now stepped into a fighting ring he can't exit easily. Anything else is more of the tone the film sets and the alterations made by the studio. Of the films made related to this time, The Rocketeer has the most sincere tone. Right when it begins, audiences should be able to tell that the story that's going to be told will be genuine and grounded in its delivery. There are also some minor logical issues when it comes to key moments in the plot, but these are small compared to the end product. To point out a few, when Peavy creates the iconic helmet, he says the fin on the back acts like a rudder for steerage. Yet, when Secord is flying, he turns his head and his direction does not change.
Come on, guys! Consistency! Gosh!
Also, when do you know the rocket pack is out of fuel? What does it run on? It would be a sorry day when you blast yourself up into the sky to find out that you're out of propellant. The direction, as mentioned before, was headed by Joe Johnston. For Johnston, this was his second feature film, and it shows that he had a knack for working with effects-driven films, but not overly abusing the technique. Like some directors. His first outing was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in 1989, then Jumanji, 1995, and after this, his much later after Captain America the First Avenger. And yes, he did direct The Wolfman and Jurassic Park 3, but that's water under the bridge for most anyway now. Okay, maybe not everybody. Actors and characters. Portraying the iconic high-flying Cliff Secord is Bill Campbell. More known for his roles on the small screen nowadays, Bill Campbell at the time was the kind of actor people didn't seem to visualize with potential. How do I mean by that? Well, the most recent shows Campbell has appeared on are Sci-Fi's Helix and Netflix's The Killing. In the decade of the 1990s, Campbell was also in a number of films, but none of them had the popular acclaim or recognition to boost his career. This movie was actually his first major film role, and because of the poor advertising, Campbell faded into obscurity as quickly as he appeared. However, basing a film's income does not determine the credibility of the actor, and for Campbell, that's far from it. The way Campbell plays Cliff Secord is honest in the approach. Secord is one of those special individuals who doesn't wear the helmet for the greater good of others. He's a reluctant hero. It is only until after he learns the real purpose of the jetpack that he decides it's no longer required to be under his ownership. That doesn't mean he's completely selfish either, because otherwise he would not have helped his friend when it was needed. This is rare because for all comic book characters that have been created, most find their calling after certain tragic events, or something along those lines. Secord, first crossing paths with the jetpack, was not tragic, nor did he choose to wear the outfit because it served a higher purpose. This makes him not only different, but also a likable character. He has good intentions, he just fumbles along the way. And that's expected since he's not a trained superhero. The way Campbell acts through his scenes are well executed, and there are a number of scenes where he has comical lines or actions. It's a star-making performance by an underrated actor.
I don't want to keep it. I just want to borrow it for a while.
Clifford, when you borrow something, you don't tell nobody. They call that stealing, you know.
Just a couple of weeks. As soon as we can afford a new plane, we'll give it back, I swear.
By the way, a little trivia, he is the second cousin to cult film star Bruce Campbell from the Evil Dead franchise.
You see? It shows he even has genes for greatness.
For Secord's girlfriend, played by Jennifer Connelly, who conveniently enough has the same name, is also not the typical damsel either. There are moments of danger, yes, but there are also some scenes where she shows her independence as a female as well. Connelly, as the hero's girlfriend, is fine in her performance. She emotes properly, showing frustration and compassion for her bumbling boyfriend. It's still hard to comprehend that she was only 21 when she was in this movie. Thankfully, if it weren't for Campbell's boyish looks, the 12-year gap between these two probably would not have looked as believable playing a couple.
I think I got the part.
That's great.
I won't know for sure till tomorrow, but the director said that he liked my reading the best.
Oh, you mean you have lines this time?
Just one. But it's to Neville Sinclair.
Okay, let's hear it.
This was also Connelly's first comic book movie before she chose to be in another, about some jolly green giant, I don't know. Alan Arkin as Peavy, Secord's right-hand mechanic, gives an extra dash of comic humor. With his froofy hairdo and deadpan comments, Peavy is one of those characters who talks sense into the people who aren't thinking straight. He also has a heart, though, because no matter what, he wants to help whenever he can. Arkin is also the actor who played the father of Kim in Edward Scissorhands.
How do I look?
Like a hood ornament.
Now, on to the opposing sides of people who want the rocket. Timothy Dalton as Neville Sinclair was cast perfectly for the role. Like it seems for most UK actors, these types of roles usually go to the mysterious and unpredictable characters, and that's exactly how Dalton plays it up. In some ways, he's kind of, but I won't say fully, channeling his inner 007 traits from The Living Daylights and A License to Kill. He's suave but hard to pinpoint, and that always makes him fun to watch.
You bring me that rocket, and I'll double your price.
Under Sinclair's command is mob gangster Eddie Valentine, played by Paul Sorvino. Just looking at Sorvino says it all. He practically breathes the Italian flag. After starring in Goodfellas in 1990, the year before, it's possible as to this is how he was cast.
What room's Wilmer in?
Mr. Movie Star. He's gonna walk into the hospital with a smile on his face and a handful of posies.
On a side note, there's also a character named Lothar, who is Sinclair's sort of bodyguard. As to who he is, how he came about, or why his face looks so different compared to everyone else is not explained. The cool thing is that this character was played by an actor named Tiny Ron.
Yes, well, Tiny Ron stands at a whopping 7 feet.
Tiny Ron is mainly known for playing Al, the cop in the Police Squad TV show whose face was always out of frame. This is probably his second best role.
Where is it?
Where's what?
The rocket.
Sure you got the right house?
On the other side, Terry O'Quinn as Howard Hughes was a nice choice to represent the famous tycoon. Not only does O'Quinn give some hefty exposition lines in the film, but his character also shows that he knows when he sees a genuine person.
I'm sorry I ever dreamed the damn thing up.
Sir, I wish you would reconsider. What'll we tell the president?
Tell him the dream is over.
The two lead FBI agents played by Ed Lauder and James Handy are likable additions as well. Both are characters that assist in building the tension between what side gets closer to the rocket pack. The way they exchange lines together also make them a fun watch too.
You let him off?
Maybe you had it coming. We need to work with the patient.
In private.
Your buddy's getting fitted for a pine overcoat.
Action and cinematography. Adapting comic books with mature content isn't always the easiest. But with Disney, they managed to do okay with that. The level of content that isn't suitable for children is extremely low. There are a number of gunfights, explosions, and some instances of terror, but very little of it is graphic in any way, and that's acceptable. The most exciting action to see on screen is when Secord engages the rocket pack. For 1991, the mixture of miniatures, practical effects, and limited digital effects blend really well. The fluidity of the flight scenes are very smooth and should entice whatever audience is watching it with amazement.
I mean, heck, if it's cheaper to use, I'd commute like that every day to work. Beats the traffic lights.
The company behind these special effects were ILM, short for Industrial Light and Magic. They were also the company who did special effects for James Cameron's The Abyss and Terminator 2 Judgment Day of the same year. Also, The Shadow of 1994, 3 years later. On top of that, add special effects makeup wizard Rick Baker as the creator for Lothar's face. Baker's also known for his work in Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, The Incredible Melting Man, the Men in Black franchise, Hellboy, and Tron Legacy. As director of photography, Hiro Narita's camera work is nothing to be disappointed with either. In this case, Narita's shots are a mix of interior and outdoor scenes. For both settings, the ratio is wide scope, and the best parts are when the camera shows the viewer what is outside. This especially shines through when Secord puts on the jetpack. Whether it's rotoscoping or actual footage, the fact that the viewer can see as far as the lens does when it comes to flight makes it all the more diverse. The same goes for the indoor shots. There are scenes that have close-ups on certain faces, while other times the camera wanders around, giving a better view of the surroundings. Narita may not be known for a bunch of popular films, but some are Star Trek VI The Undiscovered Country in 1991 and James and the Giant Peach in 1996. Soundtrack and film score. When it comes to music, it is quite possible that this movie may not have been as well remembered by today if it were not for the film score. Composed by the late James Horner, who unfortunately passed away in 2015, this is one of the most underrated film scores in his career. The reoccurring and highly distinguished main title alone is enough to have a moviegoer understand why. The chimes, flutes, and piano at the start are the instruments that solidify this sincerity and innocence of the era. A time of opportunity and youthfulness. After that, the progressions become more robust and masculine. However, this is not to the point where the chords overpower the supporting cues. Trumpets, trombones, strings, and snare drums enter not long after, and that's when the theme can be heard in full form. This particular cue is for Cliff Secord and his alter ego. There are also motifs for Neville Sinclair and Jenny. Jenny's cue reminisces towards a Princess Leia theme from John Williams' Star Wars music. It's quite beautiful with a harp and mainly strings. Sinclair, on the other hand, is more of a mystery theme, and that doesn't quite exactly show its true colors until near the end. The action-related cues mesh well with the scenes at hand too, and holy crap is it a good listen. For the original album, as a total collective experience, the album is about 4 minutes short of an hour, of which 2 of the tracks involves a singer covering songs from that time. So in its entirety, that's about 50 minutes of instrumental music. But Intrada Records actually re-released the score in an expanded form. This goes far beyond 50 minutes. It's actually past 120 minutes. That's a lot more music, and thankfully, what I'm sure a lot of film score fans have been wanting. Seriously, would you expect anything else from the guy who made the music to Balto, Bicentennial Man, Glory, Jumanji, The Mask of Zorro, and most recently Southpaw? Overall impressions. Was it a flub or a job well done? What can I say? This is by far one of the best live-action Disney films of the 1990s, and it's an early comic book adaptation. It does have some writing errors when it comes to consistency, explanations, and reasoning, but they aren't all in the viewer's face to even recognize them until deeper analysis. The overall story is unique, the costume design is iconic, the characters and actors cast for those parts all work well together, the action and camera work look almost seamless, and the music, well, that's just the icing on the cake. And it's damn good icing.
So this movie definitely gets a high-end recommendation for being seen. I just want to know one thing, though. With all this high-end technology that we have nowadays, why haven't we made one yet? I mean, seriously, I'm waiting for my 500 miles to the gallon fuel economy jetpack.
We're gonna need one hell of a lawyer.
I think we're gonna need a helmet.